Coming to you live on a Thursday afternoon, fitting this in right before the Thursday night game, which I think everybody has a fantasy interest with the Dolphins and Bills going on. I am your host, Roberto, joined by my co-host, Chris DeFalco, 1-0 and 0-1 over here. How are we doing, Chris?
Doing well. Good first week. A lot of interesting storylines, but um, we're ready for week 2 here.
We are ready for week 2. So we'll get into it. We'll talk about what happened last week, introduce a new segment called Mickey of the Week, and then we'll look towards next week and make some predictions. This episode is brought to you by Brian's Pharmaceuticals. Use code CMC for 20% off. This is not a paid advertisement. Shout out Brian. So this segment is brought to you by Brian's Pharmaceuticals. Let's get into it. So I'll pull up the board right here. Last week's score. We can go top to bottom. And in the match of the commissioners, I got worked. Yeah, I mean, really when you have your wide receivers, which I went with a wide receiver heavy approach drafting wise, you got Drake London going up at 3.5 points. You got Brandon Ayuk, 4.8 points, not gonna cut it. And then Dalton Kincaid had like 2 targets, got locked up, not looking good. I also played Jalen Warren instead of Jerome Ford. Go ahead, Chris. You can tell me I was wrong about that one.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about that, as a potential Mickey of the week. So we are going to be enrolling releasing our Mickey of the week, which is our kind of gaff of the week of an owner mistake. This was in contention. I think you know, I gave you the answer. You should have played Tank Dell as well. The reason why it's not Mickey of the week is because you would have lost anyway. If you would have
Exactly.
won, I would have been much more on your ass about it. However, um, it would have been a difference of, I'm no mathematician, but 27 points less the 8 that they scored. So 21, you still would have lost. Would have been much closer. It might come down at the end of the day here, but um, yeah, I mean, you have a bell cow running back that doesn't have anybody behind him, and you playing a guy who's hurt who splits carries. It just, I would have expected a seasoned owner like you to make that correct decision, but it's week 1. It's okay.
One, we're ironing the
We
kinks
can always
out.
adjust. We can always adjust.
Iron the kinks out. I'll say that Jalen Warren is a guy who I thought was going to get a little bit more burn in this offense, even despite the injuries and everything coming out beforehand, was saying that he was in good physical condition. And then the Ayuk thing, he missed that touchdown catch in the end zone, which Peyton Manning, if you guys were watching the Manning cast, gave a lot of shit about. Should have been in camp. Should have been in camp. But yeah, technically still would not have won the matchup. And then, on handler side, pretty consistent. A 126 score is where you want to be. Didn't have any like standout performances by any of his
Yeah,
guys.
his kicker and his defense,
His kicker and his defense, yes. Shout out to my
which
kicker, Jake Moody, kicker 1, but Brandon Aubrey's 21 and Saints 16. What are you gonna say?
no, I was gonna say, that's just this goes back to the kicker defense conversation, but 35 points from 2 players that are more random than other players, um, could potentially catch up at some point. So, um,
Oh, we voted on it. We did vote on it.
yeah, I'm waiting for somebody to be on the wrong side of it and allow them to change their vote. So we'll see when that day
We'll vote
eventually
on it next
comes.
year. We'll vote on it next year. But 0-1, we got some questions to answer. I got a lot of guys going tonight. We'll talk about that later, but not great to be on one. It's just not the feeling you want. Second matchup we have here is Tom versus Corey. And Corey with a pretty low scoring performance. Tom, solid performance, 124. I mean, this dude is probably feeling great that he did not fucking draft CMC and went with Brees Hall.
Yeah, I mean, it looks good now. I agree. I think, I understand where he was coming from and making that pick, try to change it up. Looks like it's working out right now, right? But it really on how his team shaped and at the end of the year it could make he is back in Brian's house, right? You'd obviously so um it really just depends on how things unfold. But I will say I know that Tom is sleeping well tonight, knowing that he beat Corey week 1, because if he didn't, would be tough. Would be tough. I think the biggest underlying stat to take away from this matchup is we just touched upon it. Corey's team hanging 82 points with 28 of them coming from his kicker and defense. That is terrible. That is
Kickers are,
unbelievably terrible.
kickers are turning up this week.
So, Corey, you better be on the lines looking for trades, because I don't think you're going to compete with this team. You have some pieces to trade. You got to get crafty. You have to get crafty, but something's going to need to be done.
He does.
Tom,
He's got
Tom's
Jordan
team,
Mason on the bench.
he does that. He does. However, you're looking at Chris Olave, don't love him. You look at Malik Neighbors, injury report today. You're looking at Pat Fryermuth, who stinks. Garrett Wilson, great. Aaron Rodgers says he wants to get him the ball. He's going to have to carry Corey's team. And then it relies on Pat Mahomes. So it's going to be a tough year for Corey. It's going to be a grind. If everything goes right, I think he can compete, but he doesn't have that flexibility of some down weeks and still being able to snatch a win. So be interesting to see kind of how he bounces back from here.
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk about this potentially in a later segment. But Corey also playing Chuba Hubbard. Not that he would have won, but he plays Chuba Hubbard, and he's got both of the Washington running backs sitting on the bench. And Brian Robinson scored 8 points. I mean, Eckler scored 10 points. But, it's also a factor of, okay, yeah, like he wouldn't have, beat Tom with any of those starts. But at the end of the season, it comes down to points. So, 10 points here, 15 points there. You're a tiebreaker with somebody. And I just don't understand why you wouldn't start either of those guys. And you start Chuba Hubbard, who he's had some good weeks in the past, but I don't know. I'm just scratching my head at that one. And yeah, I mean, Tommy's got the fucking whole Chiefs offense. Xavier Worthy on the bench. Does he get a start this week? I don't know. We'll see. His wide receivers are kind of loaded, but yeah, good win for Tom. I know he's feeling great. Yeah, don't want to start 0-1 against Core. So good win there. Next game, I guess this was a toilet bowl. Both scores under 100 here. Brian pulls out the win. Matt unfortunately falls to 0-1. Yeah, I mean, Brian now, given that he only scored 96 points and then CMC didn't play, he had already secured the victory, but I don't think there was anything he could actually really do there. He couldn't pick up anybody pretty much. Maybe he could have picked up Kyle Juszczyk. I don't know. But that's gonna be a tough one for him moving forward. What is it, Achilles tendonitis? A lot of people are concerned about what's going on over there with him. But I mean, at the end of the day, Brian's still 1-0, and he's gotta feel good about that. But obviously the CMC stuff is not great.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Brian's team. I mean, CMC's out great. Joe Burrow can't grip a water bottle. Something's wrong with his wrist. Not great. Devon Achan, knee injury, was supposed to not play today, but he's toughing it out and playing. Then you look at Amari Cooper, also injury prone. T. Higgins on his bench, out. Keenan Allen's always hurt at some point during the season, so he's got a lot of risks. If he can stay healthy, he'll compete. But as we see through the first 2 weeks, I think even this upcoming week, he's got Joe Burrow on his bench. So you look at, potentially two, if not three, of his first 7 picks, are going to be out of his lineup, and it's just tough to win that way. So we'll see where he goes from here with the rest of his team. Um, Matt Hanley, not the greatest of weeks, but I think a lot of that relates to poor performance from your wide receivers. Michael Pittman, think that was a reach when you took him in the second round. He's got to get a lot more targets. He's gonna need to, really catch the eye of Anthony Richardson, who looks to be spreading the ball around. Um, yeah, I mean, what was the final score here?
96-82.
Okay. And, I guess Ramondre Devin Singletary was a toss up. You can't really fault him for going either one. They're both starting running backs on shitty teams and shitty offenses. Just happened this week that Ramondre did score. Um, I mean, Singletary has the catch upside. Ramondre has the touchdown upside, and it happened that you got the short end of the stick this week. But that's going to be an interesting thing to see all year long of who he's going to play based on the matchups. And I'd love to be able to look back and see, each week kind of how that unfolds.
Yeah, I was looking at the Ramondre one. Still would not have won there, but yeah, I mean the Giants. Now I know Matt is a Giants fan, maybe a little bit emotional there. But yeah, as you said, pretty much a toss up. I don't really fault him for starting single. I mean, I thought the Giants were gonna do a lot better than they did, but they look terrible out there. So I don't know. Maybe moving forward, he might be going with more Ramondre after what happened at MetLife this past weekend.
Um,
Move to the next game. All right, we got Jagger versus Devin, and Jagger with a resounding victory. I mean, this team has me salivating. Obviously, I think Cooper Cup is probably the steal of the draft at this point. I think he had like something crazy, like 18 targets. 32 points. Then he's got Jaden Daniels, another guy who's a steal, 28 points. Bears defense, 26 points. I mean, that's just a strong performance. Nothing you can really do if you're Devin. 104 points. Not gonna get you a win, but you still broke 100. Didn't really have any like shitty performances. Everyone pretty much scored above 10, but no one had that huge upside for him. So, regardless, it's going to be hard to beat 152.
yeah, I mean, you go back and you look, I mean, 26 points from a defense. I mean,
Defense are balling out.
when such a point disparity happens between a position that is statistically more random than others, this is what's going to happen. If he's in a tight matchup, he's at a 22-point disadvantage for a defense. Running backs don't have 22-point advantages or disadvantages from players. And if they do, it's because somebody went off and you did your research and you picked a player that's worthy of doing, a 22-point difference. This just goes to show you that it's totally random and can have an impact on a game. Now, with that being said, he would not have won. So, in theory, it doesn't matter. Cooper Cup looking like a potential league winner, especially with Puka Nacua out. I mean, the number of targets he had is unbelievable. Plus he, had a poor week from Amon-Ra St. Brown. So as things even out, I think Jagger's team's going to be really good going forward. Going to be something strong to watch out for. And Dev has a chance to bounce back. I mean, Jamar Chase, um, still had a decent week given he wasn't supposed to play. But definitely he's going to need a little bit more out of Dak if he's going to want to compete against some of the other teams. So should see what happens, but certainly wouldn't count Dev's team out just yet.
Yeah, I mean Kyle Pitts looked strong, had a touchdown. I think he can bounce back. Not too concerned. Needs Jamar Chase to just the Bengals figure it out. I mean, they look terrible against the Pats, but a lot of that could be. I know T. Higgins was hurt. Not maybe, and then Jamar Chase not playing in training camp. I do think it matters. It doesn't not matter to just not be in training camp. So you got to build chemistry. You got to get the offense going. I mean, Jamar Chase is just a huge piece of that offense. So yeah, I think Dev has the opportunity to bounce back. And Jagger's looking like a fucking juggernaut. And then we get to the previous Miller Lite matchup of the week. Chris, our co-host, defeating Frank Feta by a 40-point margin. I feel like this one was never really in doubt. I think Justin Jefferson was lacking a little bit in the first quarter, but he ended up scoring a touchdown. And, just good performances overall from your team, Chris, Mike Evans. I think he had two touchdowns.
You did,
Old
yeah.
reliable, old reliable in the fantasy world. And then some bad luck for Fada. Puka, I think he left early in the game. And then fucking, I don't know what Marvin Harrison Jr. did to Kyler Murray, but he was not even looking his way. And this is a game where, the Cardinals scored 28 points. I don't know the level of concern there, but you did hear what Kyler Murray said after the game. It's not my job to get him the ball. I'm getting the ball to who's ever open at the time. And he did score 28 points, so it is correct. Now, I'm not wouldn't be too concerned, but 1.4 points from pretty much like a first round pick is rough. What were your thoughts, feelings on your first matchup with Feta?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was an easy win. Um, I
Yep.
think, I think, yeah, I mean, it just not great from Fata's team. I mean, Anthony Richardson and Kenneth Walker both doing well, but after that, a lot left to be desired. Puka Nakua, um, you get tough break. He's out first round pick or first pick of the second round is out. That's going to be tough. Mark Andrews was getting passed over by Isaiah Likely. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think Mark Andrews is still the guy to look at. Um, so should see what's coming up there. However, I did see a next gen stat on Marvin Harrison. He averaged the lowest speed of any wide receiver in week one coming out of his routes.
Jeez.
So, what I believe is happening and what I believe has happened in the past is that Marvin Harrison is known for getting open, but he's not a fast player, right? So, he's getting open from schemes and from finding holes in the defense. In the NFL, all of those, are in play, but speed is a factor, right? The speed is just 10x of college. So I'll be really curious to see if he's going to be able to get open, in the NFL, not having the greatest speed or not being able to run at his full speed and still be able to get the breaks on his routes that he is. So I wouldn't push the panic button, but just curious to see how that's kind of unfolded during week one. Um, and will definitely be a storyline the rest of the year as a rookie wide receiver picked in the first round, will need to produce. Otherwise, Fada's team, realistically doesn't have a chance, of competing. It's hard when you have a first round pick,
Just shit the
not
bed.
not contributing,
Yeah.
significantly. So
I mean, even on his bench, I mean, Dontavian Wicks, he fucking probably, I think he dropped like two or three passes out in Brazil on Friday. Then Blake Corum, was he even active? I bet
he
him.
was, he was,
Did he get
he
any fucking
was.
burn?
I don't think so. I think we knew that this was going to happen. At least Chris knew this was going to happen. But um, yeah, I mean, I don't think Blake Corum is an NFL running back. NFL running backs today are guys that can block. They're guys that could catch balls. I mean, he was just a Michigan running back who ran the ball and ran the ball a lot because they were winning. And behind a good offensive line, I think he would be a good running back in the NFL. In 2008 when the running game was, we're pounding the rock. But I just don't see him being utilized in an offense that Sean McVay, who's one of the best offensive minds in the game and crafty, is going to put out a guy who's, just mainly a runner. Interesting. Going to let you in a little all access. After the 90 minutes of shit talking that I received from Fada during the draft about Blake Corum eventually being the number one running back, and then Corey's flurry of tweets about him being a punt returner. Somehow I followed that up by offering Frank a trade of Zach Charbonnet for Blake Corum. I think there was a third party involved with Adam. Long story short, that trade was turned down. Well, guess what was in my inbox this week? That exact trade. And while I'm playing Frank and Kenneth Walker looks to be out, we will not be making that trade. So thanks for coming. I'll see you this week.
That is a tough one. Now, we're going back to Blake Corum. He did have a tackle, an assist last week. I guess he was playing special teams, but not a,
Ah,
not a carry. I don't know. This doesn't show if he was on how many snaps he was on the field for, but good on special teams. Yeah, that is funny about the trade. Yeah, I mean, you're not gonna make that this week, obviously, because you're playing him again. Scheduling gods, I guess, didn't really account for the double matchup, but it's a little grudge
I
match.
just, I made a phone call, right? I made sure after the first week to, have my team get, two warm-up games, let's say, getting into the season here. So back to back, this is like when teams come, they'll scrimmage on the practice fields before a preseason game, and on a Wednesday and then a Friday they play the preseason game and then they get ready into the season. So that's pretty much what we're looking at here for my team. Through a 20 to the scheduling gods to set Fade up 1-2. Hopefully this, turns into a 2-0 start for Chris, ready to rock.
Yeah, well, hopefully maybe Veda can figure it out this week. But yeah, with no Kenneth Walker, I don't really know who he's going to start
Let's
right
preview
back.
that. Let's preview that one.
Well, we'll
Well,
preview it. I think we have one more. We got
oh, the heavyweight battle. How
the
could I
heavyweight
forget?
battle. This was the highest scoring game of the week. The backyard brawl with Derek and Adam, and Derek comes on top. Little revenge from the playoffs semifinal defeat that he took last year. But he had to be feeling good after that Friday game in Brazil. That stack of Jalen Hurts, Saquon Barkley, and AJ Brown accounted for was that 60 points right there, and then Chris Godwin 23 points. I think Derek has moved to 6-0 in week one. So if every week was week one, Derek would be a rich man because he would have won every fantasy football championship of our league history. So you just don't want to see this guy on your schedule week one. You just don't.
Well, he's where things are a little bit different is, two of those years he had Sammy Watkins go for 40 points week one and then shit the bed. So a little bit different here. He has a much more well-rounded team. I think, getting 22 points from Chris Godwin and Mike Evans getting 23 points is going to be tough. I think it's going to be more of a little seesaw battle back and forth. I think they're going to have, one week, one guy's going to go off, the other guy's going to kind of be in the shadows, vice versa, not to mention his Eagles, team fully went off. So it'll be interesting to see if the Eagles continue to move. Obviously, Derek's team's going to continue to move. But if not, might be tough. Um, for Adam, got to hang his head. That's a tough one, but he's, ultimately he's in it. Um, think a little bit of the mask again, 21 points out of your defense covers up 4 points from Christian Kirk, right? At the end of the day, your wide receiver can't put up 4 points against a team that throws up 160. It's just never going to win. So, but nonetheless, he's got Joe Mixon, he's got Derrick Henry, he's got Josh Allen, he's got CeeDee Lamb. Those four guys are going to have to carry his team. And it should be interesting to see kind of how the rest of the year unfolds for him.
Yeah, Adam will be fine. 130, that would have won a lot of the matchups. But again, he ran into the week one buzz that his little bro Derek is. So we'll see that matchup later in the season, I believe. Yeah, so that's all the week one matchups and recap, and we'll move to our next segment, the Mickey of the week. Chris, would you like to lead off here?
Yeah, so just Mickey of the Week is gonna be the ultimately it's gonna be, who makes the biggest bonehead decision of the week.
It's Mickey Mouse
So
shit.
yeah, it's just who's gonna be the one that is just being an idiot. And I think if you were looking at a FanDuel odds of who would be winning this award and you bet on the favorite, you probably won some money. So I want everybody to take a second to stop, think, say it out loud. Who would be the first person to be nominated for Mickey of the Week?
All
Bro,
right.
without further ado,
My Rookie of the Week is the
Mickey
reigning champ, Corey Paulina. As I
Mouse.
mentioned before, you drafted two running backs on the Commanders, did not play either of them, and instead played a guy on the worst offense in the league of the Panthers who scored 1.7 points. So for that, Corey, you are getting the Mickey of the week.
Yeah, I was thinking about that myself when I was scrolling through Corey's team, and I was like, oh, Brian Robinson scored. Let me see if he played Eckler instead. And then I looked, both of
Didn't
them
play
on his
either.
bench. Didn't play either of them. So, I mean, I understand what he was trying to do. However, you just can't do that. You can't play Chuba Hubbard against the Saints defense who's great against the run on arguably the worst team in the league. Like he's a backup running back. So I don't know. Hopefully Corey learns his lesson. It's going to be interesting this upcoming week. He might be bailed out because looks like Mason's going to obviously take the starting role. So he's going to play. Is he going to continue to play DeAndre Swift or is he going to play one of the other guys? I don't know. But I think he's going to be in this conundrum all year long, right? It's going to be tough to decide which one are you going to want to play. Do you want the runner who scores the touchdowns or you want the pass catching back? So I don't like drafting two running backs that split carries. It's just a mental battle all season long. But um, yeah, we'll see what Corey, ultimately wants to do.
Corey, you should look at maybe dish one of those guys. Although it's a little bit of insurance with the injury risk, but it's going to be tricky for you on which one you want to play each week. All right, so that was Mickey of the Week segment. I think before we head into week two previews, is there anybody, Chris, that you think if you had to pick somebody in the league who's their hands getting close to the panic button, it's still only week one, anybody you would say needs to click that panic button a little bit?
Freda.
You think he's clicking the
Yeah,
fade? Yeah,
yeah.
click
I
the
mean, look,
panic.
I would say Fada didn't have the greatest of drafts. However, his team is has hit an iceberg, right? Like he your first two picks just didn't produce, and now one's out 4 weeks, and the other one it has his quarterback saying it's not my job to get him the ball, right? Like that's tough to recover from. If his QBs and his running backs perform, he'll be in weeks, but when you have wide receivers in a full point PPR league that don't score 10 points, it's very, very hard to win. So it's going to be, something that he's going to have to get crafty with. He might have to take a chance on a trade. I have no idea, but if I was him, I would certainly be looking to make a move. Um, Outside of that, I think everybody else just has to take it easy, has to be okay, um, with their team and just be ready to react when they ultimately are able to see an opportunity in front of them.
Yeah, for my person who should be potentially thinking about the panic button, I'm gonna go with Brian here because CMC hurt, Devon A. Chain playing, but banged up, and he's already had injury concerns in the past. Uh, who else did he have on his team that I was just looking at? There are some concerns I would have if I was Brian. Do we know what's the status with CMC? He's definitely not playing this week,
Yeah,
but
it said what did it say? An Achilles strain. I saw a tweet. It said like those injuries can take up to a couple months to heal. So I know that he hasn't been pushing it. Like if he's been out a month already or out 5, 6 weeks already, I mean, my prediction is that he's back before week 6. I don't think he's playing the next, 3 weeks. So if I was guessing, I'm saying he's back week 5, week 6. But I would certainly be, looking at it as like, hey, if I can get into the playoffs and have CMC back, that's the way I gotta move.
yeah, that is true. That is true. He also had T. Higgins, who was hurt. Keenan Allen, who seems to be banged up as well. I would, and then Joe Burrow, who apparently can't grip a football. So some concern there. I would be, he did offer me a trade before, didn't like it. He's trying to pry Tyreek Hill out of my hands, and that's way too early in the season for me to be considering that. So, Brian, best of luck. Hopefully, you don't have to push that panic button, and CMC can come back within the next several weeks, I would say, since doesn't, again, with the CMC thing, when it's a calf injury, I was like, okay, whatever, calf, I get calf cramps sometimes. As soon as they said Achilles, which now the calf and the Achilles kind of like very close, they're like neighbors. But when I heard the Achilles, I was like, ooh, that is not what you want to be hearing for any first round pick. So that really changed everything when I heard that one. So let's move on to our next segment, which is going to be NFL Week 2 preview matchups. We'll start from the top here, which seems to be, I think it's just auto putting me first. But we got Derek going up against myself. Um, and this one, a lot going for me this tonight on Monday Night Football. It's I got Tua, James Cook, Tyreek, and Dalton Kincaid. Derek does not have a soul tonight. This is gonna be a long, dragged out battle, hopefully, because he's got the Eagles going on Monday night. So I'm gonna be sweating that one out. And I do have Drake London on Monday night. So hopefully that can offset a little bit of what that team will do on Monday. But yeah, what are your thoughts on the matchup? I got Jerome Ford starting too.
Um, what are my thoughts? What are my thoughts? It's going to be a tough one for you, to be honest. I think the only chance you have of winning is you getting up to a huge lead this week, tonight. If you can get, 70, 80 points out of these four guys, that would be great. I think puts a little pressure on Derek. Um, However, the Eagles playing the Falcons, who just lost to the Steelers, turn the ball over a couple times. Steelers have a good defense. However, if the Falcons are going to turn the ball over to the Eagles, that's going to be a tough one because they're going to be pushing the ball up and down the field. So, um, you know, granted, anything could happen. I think you really need a big week out of those guys playing tonight. Put a little pressure on Derek, make him sweat a little bit, and then things can evolve from there. So,
I agree. I agree. We need a lot of points coming up here in our. Do we want to still make predictions on our matchups?
we can. I think Derek's going to beat you. So 0-2 might be a tough start for you.
That would be a tough start for me. That would be catastrophic. I don't think any team, we have to keep records on this, has started 0-2 and then won the fantasy football league. This is why we need a bookkeeper. But yeah, I'm really hoping that we can. Dalton Kincaid needs to get active in this offense. A little concerned about Tyreek Hill. The Bills usually do a good job of playing defense against him. Hopefully, he can break through tonight and regress to more of his mean. Next matchup, we got Corey going up against Amon, your mom. Ooh, well, it's a tough one. Talking about starting 0-2, you're going up against Jagger, who is looking like a juggernaut with his team. How do you get all these guys to get fat? I mean, I wanted Pacheco pretty badly. and he got Amon-Ra and Cooper Kupp. I mean, Corey is in a tricky spot. Now he does have Jordan Mason, who went off last week. We'll see if he can replicate that again. CMC is most likely not going to play, but again, going against Jagger is going to be tough.
Yeah, he's got a good team. I think Puka Nacua being out just feeds more in a Cooper Cup. And he's got Jaden Daniels against the Giants defense. So it's gonna be tough for Corey. Um, I do see Corey's got Brian Robinson in, smart move. Um, Malik Neighbors might be hurt. Who the hell knows what's gonna happen with him? Pat Fryermuth, terrible, terrible tight end to have. So any chance Corey's gonna have is he's gonna need a big week from Pat Mahomes. Um, he might need 30 points out of Pat Mahomes, and he's going to need 25 out of Garrett Wilson. So if those guys can produce, and Jagger not have a team, that went off like it did last week, I think Corey could pull off a win, but I would say it's very unlikely. I think Jagger's going to pull this one out.
Yeah, Corey, maybe we'll be in the 0-2 club again with each other, but not again. But I mean, hey, at least you're the reigning champ, Corey. I mean, that's what you can hang your hat on. Maybe you start. He's got Brian Robinson in, so that's an improvement from last week. Chuba Hubbard probably just get dropped at this point. All right. So heading into the next matchup, we got the rematch, the grudge match. Beta trying not to start 0-2. And Ken Walker, do we have an injury report on him? Is he playing? What's his deal? Non-participant on Wednesday due to an oblique. And he did not play in the fourth quarter. I was not aware of that. Yeah, I mean, that's going to be tricky because if he doesn't have Ken Walker, don't really know who he's starting there. I guess you got to go
Yeah, I mean,
Chase Brown.
yeah, he's toast. My team's going to win. We can move to the next matchup.
That was a quick one. Chris will be 2-0, Fada 0-2.
Also, wait, who? That reminds me. Actually, I wanted to bring up a point here. Um, I don't really understand the thought process of him dropping Jameel McClain. And I also don't understand anybody else picking him up while on the waiver wire. So, um, yeah, I mean, Jameel McClain had more touches than Javonte Williams for the Broncos. Don't love the Broncos. Think they have a shitty offense, but um, I think it was too early to drop a running back, especially at a position of need. For somebody who had, more touches than who we thought would be the starter. So, yeah, just somebody I had to pick up.
How you
Just
pick him up?
to sit there. Say again.
You snagged him.
Yeah, I snagged him. I didn't realize he was on Frank's team, but obviously looking back now, Frank, I bet you wish you had him if um, Ken Walker doesn't play. So just I know he had to make a play for some wide receivers because of Nakua being out and how things look, but yeah, I think it was a really I would have dropped Blake Corum over Jameel McClain, but
It's a Michigan guy,
little
though.
Michigan guy, so he's thinking with his heart, not his head. Going to cost him 2 losses. So tough, tough. Sorry, Frank.
So the waivers too now, the waivers are a little bit juicier this year because we reduced the roster size, the bench size from 7 to 6, which I made some tough decisions because I didn't want to really drop any of my guys. But I mean, hopefully that just makes it so that we just have better waivers this year. Because in the past, you would look at the top running backs and fucking Kyle Juszczyk would be like top 10. So hopefully I think that was a good move that we decided to vote on. So next matchup, the only 1-0 versus 1-0 matchup here is the Man Bear Jew Pig versus Tom Hanley. And what are we thinking about this matchup?
Matchup of the big boys. Both like to enjoy lunch, like myself.
This is the
So
Miller Light matchup of the week, by the way.
yes. I mean, Hanley's got the projection, got it. He's got J.K. Well, he's got Brees Hall, who's got a 23-point projection. So you're obviously always going to have a good thing there. And then he's got Rashee Rice at 17 points sitting in his flex. Um, I think that this matchup's going to come down to quarterback play. I think if you look down the rest of their lineup, I could see some things going pretty equally between their running backs, between their wide receivers, also between their tight ends. I think we saw it in week one, Travis Kelsey not going full speed. Why would he? He's marrying arguably one of the richest women in the world. He's not worried about catching touchdowns in week one of an NFL game at age 35. So I would put him a little bit more on a playing field with George Kittle. So looking down, I mean, Tom has the flex spot advantage. But I think it's ultimately going to come down to how Kyler versus Brock Purdy score, and that difference is ultimately going to be the winning difference. So I still give the edge to Tom, but it's a very slight edge. I think Handler can certainly pull this one off.
Yeah, yeah. I think the quarterback play, as you mentioned, leans me in the direction of Manbear Jupig. Just because I mean Kyler versus Brock. Kyler looked great week one. I mean, I think he could be a dark horse MVP candidate for that team. So I'm going to give the slight edge to Josh. I think Ridley will probably get locked up. We'll see what happens with Diggs on Sunday Night Football. I feel like that might be up for debate there in terms of, what's going on with that offense. I know he caught, I think, one or two tutties, which kind of helped him. Now, Tommy does have Xavier Worthy on the bench. I feel like he probably wants to play him, but can't really take that risk with all these. If the Chiefs somehow come out and fucking stink it up on that Sunday against the Bengals, probably not what you want to do, but I mean, he fucking balled out in that first game.
Yeah, yeah, I think he's. You got to wait it out a little week. You can't just play the guy on 1 week, but certainly somebody that I'd be excited to have on my bench.
100%.
Um, could get into the same position that Corey's in with the running backs. Wide receivers obviously playing two on the same team is a much better idea than playing two of the same running backs, on the same team, or two of the running backs on the same team. But he could potentially get into that bind of like, which one do I play in a week? And hopefully he makes that right choice. So be interesting to see that one.
Yeah, it's tricky. And this was we hit our last matchup. Purple
No,
Cobras.
there's one more after that.
I was there.
Yeah.
Second last matchup, Purple Cobras versus Jerry Had a Little Lamb, Adam versus Matt. I think that this one's, the projections are high here. It's going to be a shootout. Don't really know who I'm going to give this one to in terms of a head nod, but it does seem like this one will be figured out by the end of Sunday at least. Actually, no. Matt's got Bijan Robinson on Monday night, so Adam will probably need to sweat that one out on Monday. Again, it's always the worst feeling heading into a Tuesday if you get caught because another guy had somebody going on Monday night. But yeah, what are your thoughts on the matchup?
Yeah, this is essentially a pick 'em. I think Matt's team's looking good. Got some tough matchups with Stroud going up against Chicago D, but these matchup rankings are a little skewed given it's just week one. But um, I think Matt's receivers are going to need to produce. I think we know that Stroud and Bijan, and Ramondre are going to get touches. They're going to have, an impact on the game. But DJ Moore, Michael Pittman, DK Metcalf have to have a much better week than they did last week for him to win here. So I think that'll be the key to the week. And then Adam, his flex spot looks tough. Zach Moss, yes, he's the starter. Yes, Joe Burrow can't really throw it, but if I'm playing the Bengals, I'm just ultimately stacking the box, right? I know they have Jamar Chase, but no T. Higgins. Their third wide receiver this year is a bum. It's not Tyler Boyd. They don't have a tight end, right? So if you double Jamar Chase and stack the box, you're probably good. So he's in a little bit of a pickle there of who to play. I personally don't know the answer to even make a recommendation. What I can say to Adam is he should not be rostering the Vikings defense because he only had them playing the Giants, and it's taken up a roster spot for potentially somebody that could go off this week, in which he can then try to trade. So, Adam, little tip: there's no need to hold the Vikings defense on your bench. I know they scored 21 points, but they're
Did,
playing good offenses the next few weeks. Time to drop.
did he pick them up or
He picked them in the last round of the draft, which was actually a smart move
smart?
considering they play in the Giants. However, get him out of there, pick up somebody of some substance, and then you hope that that person hits and they can be somebody in your lineup or somebody you can trade. So, Adam,
So pro tip.
little pro tip: can't wait to see the recent activity Vikings drop. So I'll keep an eye out for that
Yes.
one.
Yes. Put the alerts on for that one. Adam does like taking advice. He's not he has no ego involved there. Okay, last matchup for real now is gonna be Devin against Brian. 0-1 versus 1-0 here. And if we look at this matchup, it's well, Brian has a big issue with no CMC going here. He's got Rico Dowdle, who we expected a little bit more out of him last week, Rico Dowdle. He only had 26 yards. Seems like Zeke was in the backfield pretty heavily last week. So unless that changes, this is going to be a real tough one for for Brian.
Yeah, his team was not looking great. No, I mean, ballsy move to start Baker over Joe Burrow, but I think Brian does a good job of not necessarily relying on projections and the easy choice. But yeah, to win, he's going to need a big week out of Achan tonight. He's going to need Nico Collins to score a touchdown. He's going to need Amari Cooper to be good. Um, David Njoku being hurt, tough. McCaffrey being hurt, tough. Christian Watson not having Jordan Love to throw him the ball is tough. So it really is going to be if one or two of his guys can step up, he might have a chance. Dev seemed to look strong. Jamar Chase, Debo Samuel with high projections. We saw Debo get a lot of work last week, a couple of touches out of the backfield. Um, as a if you're a Debo Samuel owner, what you don't hope for is that some of those touches last week was because Ayuk was slow getting back to camp and was more funneled towards Debo because he was ready. If some of his touches and his targets come down, it's going to be a tough one for him to see. Um, and then his bench not great. I mean, Addison being out, whatever. Playing a running back in your flex always tough. We'll see how it shakes out. I give the edge to Devin, but anything can happen.
Yeah, I'll give the edge to Devin. And again, I mean, just Brian team is looking a little bit. I mean, Keenan Allen didn't suit up for practice today. T. Higgins did not suit up for practice. We were talking about CMC. Nico Collins with a questionable next to his name. Limited participant at practice due to an illness that makes me think he'll play, but you just don't want these injury concerns in week one with some of your top guys. Do like the Alan Lazard pickup, although Alan Lazard sucked all last year. He did go off last week. I don't know how much of that was just a random occurrence, but maybe he has a lot of chemistry with Rogers. We'll see. But yeah, I gotta give the edge to Devin here. All right, so I think
I
that's
like it.
all the matchups. I think that was our last segment. So any closing thoughts as we head into week two?
No, just good luck to everybody. I think if anybody is looking to make a trade, certainly hit my line. I'm always looking to find some value in the market. But we'll be certainly will be interesting. So yeah, that's it. Till next week. Hopefully the Mets are in a better position than they are now.
Go Mets.
That's really about it.
Even if my fantasy team stinks, as long as the Mets are winning, that'll keep me going. But if the Mets start fucking really, if they don't keep up this momentum, gonna find me hanging, Jersey Jerry.
Nah, we'll be all right. We'll
All
be all right.
right. All right. Thanks everybody for listening, and we'll catch you next week.